Now, regardless of where you are in the world, I think you'll be very familiar with the Got Talent franchise. It's been sold to more countries than any other TV talent show has ever had. It is a Guinness World Record for the most successful talent show format. And regardless of where you are in the world, I'm pretty sure you have, or at least have had your own version of Got Talent. But in recent years, you may have noticed that the execution and overall viewing experience of your own Got Talent may have changed. The ones I know definitely have for certain are America's Got Talent, given how so much sap there is, how much sob stories there are, given how predictable the golden buzzer moments is nowadays. Yeah. But given how much America's Got Talent has changed, if you compare it, let's say, for the first few seasons to the more recent seasons, the format is pretty much still the same, but in terms of the execution, directory, the editing, the filming, and just the general viewing experience from watching it is very different to how it was, let's say, from when it was in its early years. And I would see clips of America's Got Talent, and one thing that I absolutely despise is the slow motion moments during the golden buzzer. But I will get to that in a bit, and I will explain why. But for this video, I want to focus on the Got Talent format on my home soil, which is basically Britain's Got Talent. Because I have seen pretty much every single series of Britain's Got Talent, and there was a point where I used to really like watching it, but now it has become very predictable, very forced, very fabricated, and so many producer plants. But there is a lot to unpack here. So the first thing I want to talk about as to how much Britain's Got Talent has actually changed is, like I've said previously, execution, directory, videography, and the general viewing experience from watching it. Because when Britain's Got Talent first started in its first 2 years, it was very, very simple. No cinematics, no fancy camera work. It felt real, and I think that's what got people hooked. It was nothing too fancy, it was kept simple, it focused more on talent rather than anything else, which was the whole point of the show Britain's Got Talent. But if you watched an episode of Britain's Got Talent from, let's say, 2008 or 2009, in comparison to what we have now, you'll notice that there is what feels like a lot more fakery, a lot more cinematics, a lot more staged and fabricated shots. And there is so much about Britain's Got Talent now that just doesn't feel real anymore. Because in classic Britain's Got Talent, they would just show you the act as it is, with no alterations, no fancy cinematics or effects or anything, and nothing about that for me ruined it for me, because it helped keep it real. It got to let you see the act as it is, as it was on stage, with no editing, with no fancy work, nothing. But nowadays, Britain's Got Talent audition footage has been tampered with slow motion shots, these ridiculous constant lens flare. I'm sick to death of seeing the same lens flare over and over and over again. And one thing that I know is not new for Britain's Got Talent, it's practically been a thing from the get-go, but in recent years it's been more and more common, is the use of these same audience sound effects over and over again.
David, what did you think?
And at times when they are showing acts that could put the person's life in danger, they use the exact same stock audio of the crowd shrieking in horror. I am sick to death of it. Look, I'm just going to show you this from one audition. I believe this was from 2020. Just listen to the amount of times that they use the same sound effect over and over and over again. And I guarantee that every single modern episode of Britain's Got Talent that covers the auditions, that sound effect is used at least once. And I am sick to death of hearing it over and over again. Like, why couldn't they just have microphones facing the audience? Why not just use the audio from the audience as it happens? Other than for effect for the viewer, maybe. But I would have personally liked to have heard how the audience at that audition would have reacted, and just constantly throwing the same sound effects over and over and over again. It is just bloody annoying. But the one thing that has really changed about Britain's Got Talent is how the golden buzzer is executed. Because there was a point where the golden buzzer would hit you like a ton of bricks, but now it's become so predictable and so forced with so many fabricated shots, so many stage shots. So let's just take a look at moments in the early years of the golden buzzer.
I'm gonna say. When
And in comparison to what we have now.
However, losing everything is like the sun going down on me.
So yeah, you may understand where I'm coming from in terms of how much this annoys me, because it doesn't have the same effect on you as a viewer, and when you see people going on, like, you can just look at a person, or it may have been based on something that they have said, that you could be like, yep, they're definitely getting the golden buzzer. Now I'm going to compare two different golden buzzer moments, each from a different year on Britain's Got Talent, and I want you to be the judge as to which golden buzzer moment do you think is better. So here's the first one. And here is the second one.
And that was the best version I've ever heard in my life. So I'm going to do this.
Now, take a moment. Which of those two do you think is better? Okay, if you said the first one, you would be right. But why do I say that? Well, even though you can hear the crowd chanting, push the gold, it does leave you on a cliffhanger as to will any of the judges actually go. The judges do deliberate as to whether or not they should press the golden buzzer. Amanda suddenly goes along and presses it, and then you can see the look in Deliso's face. It's the fact that Amanda hits the golden buzzer so suddenly, it really hits you like a ton of bricks. It's just like, you wonder when it's going to happen, and then boom, it suddenly happens just like that, and really hits the viewer. Now if we compare that to what we have here, you can see the lens flares, the painfully staged and fabricated shots, like the fact that that obviously wasn't filmed in the moment that it happened, because it was painfully obvious that that shot was not filmed in the moment. It's not as if like a cameraman, like I guarantee no cameraman would be able to run up onto the spot when the golden buzzer is pressed in time, especially with the equipment they do have. And there is, you can definitely tell, like for example, like in one shot, there's no cameraman in front of the golden buzzer, whereas here, all of a sudden, cameraman in front of the golden buzzer. Now the reason why that annoys me so much is because I would honestly rather see the exact moment the golden buzzer was pressed, because they have quite a few cameras set up, so why would they even bother having more gigs of footage, more minutes of footage, and more footage for the editing staff to go through? Just why? Why not show the moment that actually happened? Why fabricate all these shots? Other than for effect, I understand that, but it's just absolutely ridiculous, I think, that you've got all of these cameras, you could have picked from every single one of them, but you literally decided to recreate the moment and have a fabricated cinematic style shot. No, that completely ruins the moment. It doesn't make it feel real, it just makes it feel forced, fabricated and fake. And just to back up what I'm saying, take a look at this footage from a girl who received the golden buzzer in 2023, I believe it was. Now, in terms of how I know that some of those shots were fabricated and staged, is boom. This footage from an audience member shows a cameraman kneeling on the stage. There's also a man with a leaf blower and a man grabbing some of the confetti and putting it in front of the leaf blower. Yeah, I think that's really all that needs to be said, because it does make me wonder if this is violating a fundamental clause in Ofcom's broadcasting code. Because when it comes to America's Got Talent, broadcasting rules in the USA are different. So if something isn't juicy or if something's a bit slow, then the cameras could be cut and something could be cooked up for more dramatic effect. However, in the UK, broadcasting rules are very different, because Ofcom, the regulator of television and communications in the UK, have this clause in their broadcasting code.
Factual programs or items or portrayals of factual matters must not materially mislead the audience.
So what does that mean? Well, it's quite simple. It basically means that you cannot portray events that are either fake, scripted or tampered with as real, and you cannot pass off some fabricated, staged and scripted shots or moments and try to pass them off as something legitimate. So, based on this, I do feel like that this is violating that clause of Ofcom's broadcasting code, and given the amount that Simon Cowell spent over in America, I'm starting to wonder if he is so out of, well, Simon Cowell is out of touch as a person anyway. I have already talked about that in my X Factor video, but given the amount of time that Simon Cowell has been out in America, I think he's definitely forgetting the distinction between the broadcasting code in America and the broadcasting code we have in here. We're still recording. Jesus, 17 minutes. But there is another reason as to why Britain's Got Talent pretty much sucks nowadays and isn't what it used to be, is the amount of producer plants. Because we are seeing a lot of different acts from different countries. Some of the acts have already been on Got Talent in other countries. I know that there was a young boy who was a dancer who had already been on India's Got Talent, and I know that Lauren Allred was pretty much a producer plant, because prior to this she had already had 2.3 million streams on Spotify. One of them had already performed on the Royal Variety Performance previously, but yeah, there are countless acts that have been on other Got Talent formats around the world. They come over, get invited to audition, and some of them even get the golden buzzer, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I won't go on Britain's Got Talent, and that's purely because of, not so much in terms of how the show is executed, in terms of how many setups there are, but purely because of a contract I will not sign. And to save my breath, go and check out Mess Music's TV video of it, because the contract is absolutely horrendous, and I don't even want to dissect anything from that video, because you need to see the whole thing to understand how bad that Britain's Got Talent contract really is. So I can only imagine how it must feel to be a hard-working, either a musician, a singer, or whatever talent you may have that would be worthy of £250,000 on a place on the bill of the Royal Variety Performance, only for your chances of not making it, you don't make it past the preliminaries, and your spot is given to either a producer plant, or even worse, a CGI cat. Yes, that has happened.
And I'm feeling
Wow, what a voice.
know how I feel. River running free.
And honestly, that right there pissed me off. And it pissed me off even more so the fact that that made it to the semi-finals and turned out to be Tom Ball, who I believe placed third in the year before. Because if I had got 4 yeses at the auditions and I didn't make the cut for the semi-finals, only for one of the slots that I could have potentially had being given to a CGI cat, I would have been absolutely furious. Because I can only imagine what it must feel like to have gotten 4 yeses at the auditions, to have worked so hard to try for a wider platform, to get to a better position to where you are in life, only for your slot to be taken by a producer plant. And the producers will definitely make sure that those producer plants get through to the live final. Because in terms of fixing these shows, they rely on one specific target audience, and that is older people, or people who have no contact with social media, because they're not going to be in touch in terms of what actually goes on, because social media seems to be the biggest expose for these producer plants, and with older people who tend to have shorter memory loss, who don't remember things as well as they used to, so they're going to save this act for the very last, so that these people will remember to vote them into the live final, or to even win the whole thing. And that's the last but definitely not least thing I want to talk about, is the producers fixing the show. Because it's little wonder why the very last act to perform in the live final ends up winning the whole thing. Because there are some acts that have been placed last and ended up winning, which has clearly worked for the show's producers, but I don't really want to name some of them because I don't want to disrespect them, because some of the people who have won have are undeniably such talent. But it does make it so painfully obvious in terms of who the producers or even Simon Cowell would like to win the show by simply placing them last to perform in the semi-final, so that people with shorter memory loss don't forget about them, and so they pick up the phone and vote for whoever the act that they remembered, was. And when it comes to talent, it's painfully obvious that you don't need to be the best in order to win the whole show. Because when Mark Spellman revealed himself to be X in the live final of Britain's Got Talent in 2019, that was, bar Susan Boyle, the greatest moments in TV talent show history, and he didn't win. So, who did end up winning?
Colin Fakery!
Well, that was no surprise there, given the fact that Colin Fakery was a Chelsea pensioner. Chelsea pensioners tend to have a huge royal background, so he's going to get a lot of votes anyway, regardless of what he ends up doing. And of all the things he could have done absolutely anything, and Colin Fakery still would have won. I think that was just a case of people thinking, he's a Chelsea pensioner, he would be perfect for the Royal Variety performance, and that single-handedly was the reason why producers put him last. They painted him as the act to win the whole thing, and he did it. So there. How long have I been recording? I've got 24 minutes. Filming for half an hour, it's ridiculous. But I think probably my favourite winning moment from 2023 was Vigo Venn, because he did what people thought was actually impossible and got a red buzzer in his audition, yet managed to win the whole thing. And I will admit, I did vote for Vigo in the live final, and that was without a doubt the best phone call that I have ever made, because I think that was the general public rebelling. I think that there were a lot of acts in that live final that the producers and Simon Cowell would have preferred to have won, but the general public have clearly rebelled and have voted for probably the most unlikely saviour, and I have never ever laughed so hard at a winning result for Britain's Got Talent. But seriously, we need more of this, and I plea for everyone for future years for Britain's Got Talent, rebel against the producers. Don't vote for the acts who they clearly want to win. Vote for the most unlikely act who people wouldn't expect to win, because that will easily create more funnier moments and probably result in one of the greatest results in winning Britain's Got Talent. If you didn't really kind of clarify that bit, but I think you kind of get the idea with what I was saying. But in summary, Britain's Got Talent just isn't what it used to be anymore. It is not the same, it is not executed the same, it is not filmed in the same way, it is not edited in the same way, and in terms of the talent that they do actually get on the show, it is very, very different in comparison to how it was in its early years. And the early years of Britain's Got Talent, honestly, I do miss those, and I really wish that more of Britain's Got Talent didn't morph into what it is now, which is cynical, corporate, fixed, forced, fabricated, tampered with, you name it. I absolutely despise what Britain's Got Talent has become. And Simon Cowell, if you do end up seeing this, I highly doubt that you will take Britain's Got Talent back to what it was previously, because you are so out of touch with what the general public clearly wants. You are so out of touch in terms of how the music market actually works, And there is one final thing I have to say to you, and that is Simon Cowell. And this is coming from someone who's trying to make it into music as a producer, who's trying to make a living off of music, but hopefully not break it into the music industry and not on a record label. Simon Cowell, you are a cunt.